The desert stretched wide under the burning sun, a sea of gold that seemed endless. Wind moved across the dunes, carrying whispers of forgotten ages. For years, people had searched this place for traces of the past, but only sand and stone were found. Today was different. Omar stood at the edge of a dig site with his small team. He was a quiet man with calm eyes, a man who believed history had secrets hidden under every grain of sand. Many called him a dreamer, but he trusted his instincts. For months, he had studied old maps and strange records that spoke of a missing pharaoh. A ruler no book fully named, a shadow erased from history. His friend and fellow archaeologist Amir wiped sweat from his brow. "We have been here for weeks, Omar," he said. "The crew is tired. If we do not find something soon, we may have to leave." Omar knelt, pressing his hand to the sand. The desert was hot to the touch, yet beneath it he felt a faint vibration. It was like the earth itself was alive. "Something is here," he whispered. "I know it." The workers dug with renewed energy. Hours passed. The sun lowered, and at last the clang of metal struck stone. The sound was sharp and different from normal rock. They cleared more sand away and revealed a slab of dark stone carved with strange patterns. It was unlike any block they had ever seen. When they brushed away the sand, faint lines of light ran across the surface of the stone. The team stepped back in shock. Hieroglyphs shimmered on the slab, glowing faintly as if energy pulsed inside the stone itself. Amir's voice shook. "This is impossible. Stones do not glow." Omar traced the markings with his fingers. They were partly Egyptian symbols, but woven among them were strange curves and shapes like a star chart. His heart raced. This was no ordinary tomb. By nightfall, they had cleared enough sand to reveal an entrance. It was a sealed door, larger than any temple gate. Above it was the image of a pharaoh with a tall crown, but his face was scratched out, erased by purpose, not time. Around the crown, symbols of stars and suns were carved in perfect detail. The workers grew uneasy. Some wanted to leave, whispering that disturbing the tomb would bring misfortune. Omar looked at them firmly. "This is not a place of curses. This is history calling to us." His steady voice gave them courage, and the team pressed forward. When the door was pried open, a gust of cool air rushed out, as though the tomb had been waiting to breathe after 3,000 years. Torches lit the path, revealing walls lined with golden paint and carvings that shimmered faintly. Unlike most tombs, there were no offerings, no jars, no treasures near the entrance. Only lines of symbols that curved into patterns like constellations. The deeper they went, the stranger it became. The walls seemed alive, giving off a low hum that vibrated in their chests. Their lanterns flickered and electronic tools began to fail. Omar noticed that even without light, the walls glowed with a soft radiance, guiding them onward. At the heart of the passage, they found a chamber unlike any other. It was round, with a ceiling shaped like the night sky. Stars and planets glowed faintly in perfect alignment, forming a map of the heavens. In the center of the chamber stood a massive stone sarcophagus. Its surface was smooth, yet lines of light pulsed across it like veins carrying life. Amir whispered, "This is not human work." Omar stared at the sarcophagus, his breath caught in his chest. It looked ancient, yet alive, as though it had been waiting. He felt a strange pull in his mind, a connection he could not explain. He reached out and touched the carvings. The chamber responded. The walls brightened, the star map shifted, and the floor trembled softly. The team gasped in fear, but Omar remained still. The sarcophagus pulsed with brighter light, and the markings across it moved like flowing water. "It is not only a tomb," Omar said softly. "It is something more, something hidden for us to find." The others watched in silence as the chamber's glow grew steady, wrapping the ancient stone in a halo of light. They were no longer just explorers of history. They had opened a door into something far greater, something that had waited 3,000 years beneath the sands of Egypt. For the first time in his life, Omar felt the weight of destiny pressing on his shoulders. The pharaoh erased from history was not forgotten at all. He was waiting, and the desert had guarded his secret until humanity was ready to uncover it. The chamber glowed with steady light as Omar stood before the sarcophagus. His team huddled behind him, their torches nearly useless in the radiant glow. The air was cool, almost alive, as if the tomb itself had awakened from a long sleep. Amir whispered nervously, "We should leave. This place is not natural. It feels alive." Omar shook his head. "If this is alive, then it is alive with history. We cannot turn away now." He stepped closer. The sarcophagus pulsed softly. light flowing across its surface in waves. The markings shifted, forming new shapes before their eyes. For a moment, the symbols looked like stars, then like rivers, then like eyes staring back at them. When Omar placed his hand gently against the stone, a deep vibration filled the chamber. The ground shook lightly, dust falling from the ceiling. The team stumbled, but Omar stood firm. Suddenly, a seam formed along the sarcophagus. A line of light cut through the middle, and with a slow grinding sound, it opened. Gasps filled the room. Inside the sarcophagus was not just a preserved body wrapped in linen as they expected, but also strange devices laid alongside it. Small crystals that glowed faintly, plates of metal with markings that no one could read, and a crown unlike any in history. The body itself was preserved beyond belief, skin intact, face clear. The pharaoh's eyes were closed, but his expression was calm, almost peaceful. Before anyone could move, the crystals inside the sarcophagus activated. Light burst upward, swirling into the air and forming a figure. The figure was tall, wearing the crown of a pharaoh, yet shimmering like smoke and fire. He was not flesh, but projection, a memory carried across time. The workers cried out, some falling to their knees. Amir stared in shock. "It is a ghost," he whispered. But Omar saw something more. The figure's lips moved, and though the language was ancient, Omar heard the words clearly inside his mind. It was as if the voice bypassed sound and spoke directly to his thoughts. "Children of Earth," the Pharaoh said, "you have come at last. 3,000 years have passed, and now my voice reaches you." Omar's heart pounded. He knew at once this was no spirit. This was a message left behind by a man who lived long ago but held knowledge far beyond his time. The Pharaoh continued, "I was chosen not by men alone, but by the ones who came from the stars. They gave wisdom to guide our people, to raise us higher. But they also gave warning. There are enemies beyond the sky, enemies who would see this world broken. My tomb is not a tomb of death, but a vessel of memory and protection." The chamber grew brighter as the projection raised his hand. The walls shifted again, the star map above them moving into new positions. A line of stars glowed red, forming a path across the heavens. "These are the hunters," the Pharaoh said. "They came once and they will come again. We hid our strength, waiting for those who would be ready. Only humans can unlock the key, for this is your world, your destiny." The team listened in silence, their fear replaced by awe. Omar felt the weight of the words pressing into his heart. He could not explain how, but he understood. This tomb had been built not to honor death, but to guard life. The erased pharaoh had been more than a ruler. He had been a guardian of humanity. Suddenly, the sarcophagus glowed brighter and a panel slid open at its side. Inside was a device unlike anything Omar had ever seen. It was shaped like a small cube, its surface smooth and metallic, yet it pulsed as though it were alive. The projection looked at Omar and spoke again. "You are the one who touched the seal. The key will answer only to you. Protect it, for it carries the voice of the stars." The cube rose slowly into the air and floated into Omar's hands. It was warm, humming with energy that made his skin tingle. His team backed away, unsure of what was happening. Amir spoke in a trembling voice. "Omar, put it down. We do not know what it is." Omar shook his head. "It chose me. The Pharaoh said so. This was left for us, not to harm but to guide." As he spoke, the projection began to fade, the light dimming. The Pharaoh's final words echoed in the chamber. "Guardians will awaken. Enemies will rise. Trust in your courage. Humanity was never meant to crawl forever in the sand. It was meant to stand beneath the stars." With that, the light vanished and the chamber grew silent once more. Only the faint glow of the walls remained, and the soft hum of the cube in Omar's hands. The team looked at Omar with a mixture of fear and respect. They did not understand, but they knew something had changed. Omar held the cube close, staring at its soft glow. He did not yet know what it could do, but he knew this discovery would not remain hidden for long. The desert had given up its greatest secret, and the world beyond the dunes would soon hear its call. For the first time, Omar felt the future pressing on him. He was no longer just an archaeologist. He was now the keeper of a secret older than any kingdom, a secret that tied humanity to the stars themselves. The desert night was quiet, yet Omar could not sleep. The cube rested near his tent, glowing faintly in the darkness like a watchful eye. He sat cross-legged on the sand, staring at it. His mind was full of questions. Why had it chosen him? What did the Pharaoh mean by enemies among the stars? Amir joined him, carrying a small lantern. You have not closed your eyes since we left the chamber, Amir said softly. How could I? Omar replied. That man we saw, the one they tried to erase from history, he spoke of things no human could have known 3,000 years ago. He spoke of the stars of enemies waiting. And this, he gestured to the cube, this is not of this earth. Amir frowned. You sound as if you believe he truly spoke of beings from beyond. Omar turned his gaze to the horizon, where the dunes rolled endlessly. What else explains this? These markings were not written by human hands alone. The cube is alive with power. We are standing on the edge of something far greater than history. The next morning, the team gathered to study the carvings again. Under the sunlight, the star map on the chamber ceiling glowed faintly, as if painted with light instead of stone. Omar pointed out patterns that matched real constellations. The strange shapes woven between the hieroglyphs seemed to show paths through space, not across land. One of the younger workers, Sammy, whispered, It looks like a map for travelers. Not of Earth, but of the sky, Omar nodded. Exactly. They came here once and they left this behind. The cube hummed louder in his hands. Suddenly, lines of light appeared across its surface, forming symbols that matched those on the wall. Omar felt warmth in his palm, and then the cube projected an image into the air. Gasps filled the chamber. A vision unfolded before them. A vast city not of stone but of shining towers that rose toward a sky filled with stars. Strange ships flew above it, sleek and silent. Tall figures walked among humans, their forms only partly visible, cloaked in light. They were not gods, not phantoms, but something in between, beings of flesh and power who shared their knowledge with early people. The image shifted. It showed battles in the sky, fire streaking across the heavens as dark ships clashed with the shining ones. The vision ended with a planet burning, then the cube dimmed again. Amir stepped back, shaken. This is no trick. These are memories. Yes, Omar said, his voice low. Memories of visitors who came to Earth. They must have helped the Pharaoh and perhaps others. They raised Egypt higher than it could have risen alone. Then they left, leaving him to guard their secret. The others stared in silence. The truth was too large to grasp at once. But Omar felt a strange certainty. Humanity had always looked to the stars, building stories of gods and spirits. Perhaps those stories had been shadows of real beings who once walked here. Word of the strange find spread quickly beyond the camp. Traders and travelers carried whispers of glowing walls and a tomb unlike any other. Within days, strangers began to appear near the site, men who were not scholars but carried weapons. They watched the dig from afar, waiting. Omar noticed their presence and grew uneasy. The world will not leave this secret in peace, he told Amir. Others will come not to learn but to take. That evening, the cube pulsed again. This time, it projected a smaller image directly into Omar's mind. He saw himself standing not in the desert but in the stars, holding the cube as ships surrounded him. A voice whispered inside his head, the same voice as the Pharaoh. The key is yours. You are chosen because you listen. Others will seek it for power, but you must hold it for truth. Omar felt a surge of energy pass through him, sharp but not painful. He gasped and stumbled, but the cube steadied itself in his hand as if it clung to him. When he opened his eyes, Amir was staring. What happened? Amir asked. It spoke to me, Omar said, still breathless. Not with words, but with thought. It showed me what is to come. We are standing on the first step of something far greater. This is not only about the past. This is about the future. That night, strange lights appeared in the sky. At first they looked like stars, but they moved in patterns too sharp and steady. Some workers thought they were satellites, but Omar felt differently. He remembered the vision of battles above the earth. He tightened his grip on the cube. They are watching. Perhaps they never left at all. The desert wind howled outside the tents, carrying sand across the site. The tomb had been sealed for 3,000 years, but now it was open, and its secret was no longer silent. Omar knew their discovery would draw more than scholars. It would draw the attention of forces beyond their control, both on earth and beyond the sky, and deep beneath the sand. The tomb walls pulsed faintly as though answering the lights above, like two distant voices speaking across time. The sun was setting over the desert when the first tremor shook the ground. At first, the team thought it was only the shifting of sand, but then the earth rumbled with a steady beat like a drum deep underground. Omar rushed from his tent, gripping the glowing cube. The workers gathered in fear, pointing toward the horizon. The dunes were moving. Sand poured down in waves as something massive pushed its way up from below. Slowly a shape rose, a giant figure carved like a jackal but made of black stone and metal. Its eyes burned with blue light. The statue turned its head, scanning the desert as though it were alive. Another tremor followed, and a second figure appeared. This one was shaped like a falcon, wings folded against its sides. Soon more shapes emerged, half-buried guardians rising after thousands of years of sleep. Each one glowed with the same energy as the cube in Omar's hand. The workers screamed and ran for cover, but the guardians did not strike. Instead, they stood still, facing the tomb as if waiting for orders. The glowing eyes then turned toward Omar. Amir grabbed his arm. "They are looking at you." "Why only you?" Omar felt the cube pulse in his palm. Because the Pharaoh's message was clear. They were waiting for someone who could open the tomb. The jackal guardian stepped forward, its massive feet sinking into the sand. Every step sent vibrations through the desert, but it did not approach the workers. It lowered its head slightly toward Omar, like a beast bowing to its master. Fear and wonder filled the camp. Some of the team dropped to their knees, believing they were in the presence of gods. Others whispered in panic, sure that disaster would follow. Omar steadied his voice. "They are not here to harm us. They are protectors. They have been waiting for this moment." As night fell, the guardians formed a wide circle around the tomb. Their glowing eyes swept across the desert like watchtowers watching for threats. The camp was now under their silent protection, but not everyone welcomed this miracle. On the ridge beyond the dig site, armed men were watching. They had arrived days earlier, drawn by the rumors of strange lights and glowing walls. Now seeing giant guardians rise from the sand, their interest sharpened. One of them spoke into a radio, his voice urgent. "The stories are true. Something powerful is here. We need reinforcements." Inside the tomb, Omar studied the carvings again. The cube hummed louder each time he approached the central chamber. The star map above shifted slightly, new constellations glowing red. He realized they were not only maps but also warnings. The red stars marked the path of the ancient enemies the Pharaoh spoke of. "This was never only about the past," Omar said. "The guardians are not statues. They are soldiers built to protect this place until humanity was ready, and now they answer to me because I carry the key." Amir frowned. "But ready for what?" "To fight what kind of enemy?" Omar shook his head. "The same ones who came long ago, the ones who forced the Pharaoh to build this tomb as both memory and weapon." That night the guardians stirred again, their glowing eyes all turned in the same direction, toward the distant ridge where the armed men hid. A low hum filled the desert as the guardians shifted into motion. The ground shook as the jackal construct raised one arm. From its chest burst a beam of blue light that lit up the night sky. It struck the ridge with thunder, sending the intruders scattering in terror. The camp watched in silence. The guardians had shown their strength, yet they had not harmed Omar's team. They struck only at outsiders who came with greed. Amir's voice was low. "They protect us, but they will not allow anyone else to take control." Omar nodded. The Pharaoh's words were true. These machines know who to trust. They are not blind weapons. They are watchers, meant to guard until humanity proves worthy. The workers, once fearful, now looked at Omar with respect. They whispered his name, calling him chosen, as though destiny had placed him there for this very purpose. Omar felt the weight of their faith, but he also felt the heavy responsibility pressing on his shoulders. Later, when the camp grew quiet, Omar sat near the tomb entrance, the cube glowing softly in his hands. He thought of the vision, the battles in the sky, the burning planet, the enemies that would return. The guardians were powerful, but he knew they were only the beginning. Somewhere deeper in the tomb, something greater was hidden, waiting for him to uncover it. The desert wind blew cold across the dunes, carrying the faint echo of the guardians' hum. Their glowing eyes never closed, standing like eternal statues, but Omar knew they were alive, alert, and ready. The Pharaoh had prepared them for this very moment. The tomb was no longer just a doorway to the past. It had become a fortress, and Omar now stood at its center. He looked up at the stars shining clear above the desert. "If the Pharaoh was right," he whispered, "then the real battle is not here. It is out there." The cube pulsed gently in his hand, as if in agreement. The desert was calm the next morning, but tension hung over the camp like a storm. The guardians stood in silence around the tomb, their glowing eyes fixed on the horizon. Workers whispered as they moved about, glancing at Omar as though he were no longer just a man but part of something far greater. Amir approached him with a grim face. "I saw men in the distance again," he said. "They carry more weapons now. Whoever they are, they will not give up." Omar nodded. He had expected this. News of glowing statues and ancient power could not be hidden forever. "They believe there is treasure here," he said. "But this place is not for them. It is not gold or jewels they will find. It is something they cannot control." By midday, the sound of engines carried across the desert. A convoy of vehicles appeared over the dunes, stopping just beyond the circle of guardians. Armed men poured out, their leader stepping forward. He was tall, dressed in desert gear, and his voice carried authority. "You are trespassing," the man called out. "This site is under our protection now. Hand over what you have found and no harm will come to you." The workers drew back in fear, but Omar stepped forward, holding the cube close. "This tomb belongs to no man. It was hidden for thousands of years to protect all of humanity. You cannot claim it," the leader smirked. "Then we will take it." He raised his hand and his men advanced. The guardians stirred. The ground shook as the jackal construct lifted its head. Blue fire burned in its eyes, and with a roar of sound it stepped forward. The falcon guardian spread its wings, light gleaming across its body. The armed men froze in terror. The leader shouted, "Fire!" Bullets cracked through the air, striking the stone bodies of the guardians. Sparks flew, but the great machines did not fall. Instead, the jackal raised one arm and a beam of blue light shot forward, cutting across the sand with blinding force. The men scattered, diving behind their vehicles. Chaos filled the desert. The guardians moved with precision, striking only at the intruders. They did not harm the camp or the workers. Omar watched in awe. The Pharaoh's words echoed in his mind. These guardians were not weapons of destruction, but protectors who could tell friend from foe. The intruders fired rockets, but even those barely scratched the guardian's armor. The falcon guardian lifted from the ground, wings glowing, and unleashed a blast of light that sent shockwaves through the air. Vehicles flipped and men scrambled in fear. The leader shouted again, "Retreat!" His men fled into the dunes, leaving wreckage behind. Silence returned to the desert, broken only by the low hum of the guardians. Amir exhaled in relief. "They will return," he said. "And next time they may bring more." Omar nodded. "Yes, but now we know the truth. The guardians defend this place, but they cannot remain hidden forever. The world will come with armies and governments. They will not understand what this place truly means." He returned to the central chamber of the tomb, seeking answers. The cube glowed brighter as he approached the sarcophagus. The star map above shifted again, forming new patterns. Omar studied the glowing symbols. They did not speak of wealth or kingship. They told a story of war among the stars. He placed the cube on a pedestal near the sarcophagus. Instantly, the chamber lit up. Walls unfolded, revealing hidden carvings. Images showed tall beings standing beside humans, handing them tools of light. Then came the dark ships descending from the sky. Flames consumed cities, and the guardians rose to defend. Amir watched in awe. So the stories were true. The gods of old were not gods at all. They were visitors. And they gave us these protectors. Omar pointed to the final image. It showed a great machine, larger than the guardians, hidden deep beneath the earth. A human stood before it, holding a cube like the one in Omar's hand. Lines of light connected the human to the machine, as though the two became one. "This is what the Pharaoh prepared," Omar whispered. "Not just guardians, but a weapon meant to be used only by a human who carried the key. It is waiting still, deeper inside the tomb." The workers grew restless. Some wanted to flee before more soldiers came. Others begged Omar to seal the tomb again. But Omar could not turn back. He felt the pull of destiny. "The world is changing," he said firmly. "The Pharaoh erased from history left this place not for power but for survival. If the enemies he warned about return, humanity will need this. We cannot hide it." That night, Omar stood outside the tomb looking up at the stars. The guardians stood watch, glowing faintly under the moonlight. He felt the cube hum in his hand, warm and steady. Somewhere out there, across the sky, the enemies the Pharaoh warned of were waiting, and soon, humanity would face them. The desert was silent, but Omar knew the silence would not last. The secret was no longer buried. The lost Pharaoh's tomb had awakened, and the future of Earth had already begun to shift. Omar could not sleep. The desert night was cold, but his mind burned with questions. The Pharaoh's words, the cube, and the guardians all pointed to something far greater hidden beneath the tomb. He knew the final chamber awaited him, but reaching it would not be easy. At dawn, Omar gathered his team. "We go deeper today," he said, holding the cube tightly. "There is something in this tomb we have not seen, something the Pharaoh left for humanity." The guardians watched silently as they descended through the tomb's narrow passages. The walls shimmered with light, guiding Omar toward a hidden door that had been invisible before. The cube pulsed stronger as they approached, as if urging him onward. Omar pressed the cube against the wall and the door slid open, revealing a spiral staircase descending into darkness. The air grew colder and heavier with every step. The workers hesitated, but Omar led the way. "This is the purpose of the tomb," he said. "We cannot turn back now." At the bottom, they entered a vast chamber that stretched wider than any temple they had seen. The ceiling was high, filled with glowing symbols and moving constellations. At the center of the room stood a massive construct, taller than a building, its shape blending human and alien design. Its surface shimmered with light, and delicate lines of energy ran like veins across its body. Amir gasped. "It is alive," he whispered. "Or at least it acts like it is." Omar approached slowly, holding the cube out. The construct responded. Its eyes glowed brighter, and a low hum filled the chamber. The light from the cube connected with the construct, tracing lines along its body. Omar felt the energy flow into him, not harming but merging with his own awareness. The Pharaoh's voice echoed in his mind once more. "You are the one who carries the key." The weapon was never meant to harm. It was built to protect, to guide, and to remind humanity of its strength. Only one who listens, who understands, may awaken it. Omar raised his hand. The construct's lines of light moved toward him, connecting to his palm. A surge of energy ran through his body, and he understood the mechanism of the weapon. It was not just a machine. It was a guardian, a sentinel capable of defending the earth against enemies beyond the stars. Amir looked around nervously. "Can we control it? Or will it destroy everything?" Omar shook his head. "It is not a tool of war. It is a tool of protection. It only responds to what is just." The Pharaoh trusted humanity to use it wisely. As Omar moved, the construct followed his motions, mimicking simple gestures, responding to thought as well as touch. He realized the weapon was alive in a sense, bonded to the human who carried the key, the cube. It was proof that humanity could rise beyond its limits. Suddenly, the ground trembled. Outside, the desert winds carried faint sounds of movement. The armed groups from before were returning, now larger and better equipped. Omar knew a confrontation was inevitable. The cube pulsed fiercely in his hand. He looked at Amir and the others. "We cannot fight them with guns alone. The guardians will protect the tomb, but it is time to awaken the full power of what the Pharaoh left." Omar stepped closer to the construct. The chamber walls displayed more images, showing humans standing with these machines, defending cities and planets against dark forces. The message was clear. The weapon was a promise, a tool for humanity to rise, not to conquer, but to protect. Outside, the first scouts of the intruders appeared on the dunes. The jackal and falcon guardians stirred, their glowing eyes scanning the horizon. The humans at the sight braced themselves, but Omar felt a sense of calm. The weapon was ready, and he was ready. He raised his hand toward the construct. Light shot from the cube, connecting with the massive machine. It activated fully, moving with grace and power. The hum of energy filled the chamber and echoed through the desert. The guardians outside aligned themselves with the construct, forming a circle of protection around the tomb. Amir watched in awe. This is what the Pharaoh meant. He prepared humanity for this moment. Omar nodded. Yes, humanity was never meant to hide in fear. We were meant to rise, to protect what is ours, and to stand with courage when the stars turn hostile. The cube pulsed steadily, and Omar felt the bond with the construct grow stronger. The guardians outside roared softly, a sound that vibrated through the dunes. The desert was no longer quiet. It was alive, filled with power older than history itself. Omar understood now. The Pharaoh's tomb was never about treasure or kings. It was about responsibility. Humanity had been given the choice, to hide and remain small or to rise and protect its world with courage, intelligence, and heart. He turned to his team. We are ready. This is not just about surviving. It is about proving who we are and showing the universe that humanity is strong, wise, and capable. The night sky above the desert glittered with stars, and the cube in Omar's hand pulsed brighter than ever. Deep within the tomb, the weapon stood as a silent sentinel, waiting to defend a world that was finally ready to claim its place among the stars. The desert was quiet, but not peaceful. The guardians stood tall around the tomb, their glowing eyes scanning the horizon. Omar held the cube in his hand, its warmth steady against his palm. The construct beneath the tomb waited patiently, its massive form still and silent yet full of energy. Omar turned to his team. "This is the moment," he said. "The Pharaoh left this for us not to hide, but to guide. Humanity now faces a choice to stay in fear or to rise." Amir nodded. "We cannot go back. Too many have seen this place. People will come. Some will seek power, others will seek knowledge. What we do next will change everything." Omar walked slowly toward the tomb entrance. Outside, the desert wind carried faint echoes of engines approaching. It was the armed men from before, returning with more soldiers and vehicles. They would not understand the guardians or the weapon. They would see only something they wanted to take. He felt the cube pulse in his hand as if reminding him of the Pharaoh's words. "The guardians choose who is worthy," Omar whispered. "We must prove that humanity can be trusted." The armed group appeared over the next dune, shouting and raising their weapons. But the guardians did not hesitate. The jackal lifted a massive paw. The falcon spread its wings and blue fire ran through their eyes. The intruders froze, fear spreading across their faces. Some turned to flee, but the leaders advanced, determined to seize the tomb. Omar stepped forward, holding the cube high. The construct beneath the tomb stirred, moving slowly upward, its lines of light spreading across the chamber walls. The guardians outside aligned with it, forming a circle of protection. The desert shook as the energy flowed through the machines, and a beam of light shot toward the approaching soldiers, warning them without harm. One of the intruders raised his weapon. A flash of blue light surrounded him, lifting him gently into the air and setting him down safely behind the dunes. The message was clear. The guardians would not allow violence, but they would not be ignored. Omar took a deep breath. "This is our chance to show who we are," he said. "We are not conquerors. We are protectors. The Pharaoh believed in humanity, and now we must act like it." He pressed the cube against the construct. Light connected the two, and the massive sentinel moved with grace and purpose. Its eyes glowed bright, and a hum filled the air that could be felt in the chest. The guardians outside responded, their forms shimmering with energy as if they were one with the construct. Amir looked at Omar with awe. "It listens to you. You control it, but you are not using it for war." Omar shook his head. "No, we do not fight to destroy. We fight to protect, to defend what is ours. That is the difference." The armed men began to retreat, realizing the power they faced. Omar's heart remained steady. The desert was full of witnesses now. Humans who would carry the story, guardians who would protect, and a weapon that could defend Earth if the stars ever brought danger again. Omar stepped to the edge of the tomb and looked at the stars above. The cube pulsed once, and he felt a connection, as if the Pharaoh's voice whispered through the light. "Humanity is strong when it chooses courage. It is wise when it chooses justice. Remember this always." The team joined him, standing among the guardians. No one spoke. Words were unnecessary. The cube in Omar's hand, the construct beneath the tomb, and the glowing guardians around them were proof of a truth larger than any kingdom, any battle, or any empire. In that moment, Omar understood fully. The tomb, the Pharaoh, and the guardians were never about treasure or power. They were about responsibility. Humanity had been given the key to rise, to protect, and to stand as equals with the universe itself. The desert night held its breath as Omar turned to his team. "We must share this carefully," he said. "Not for greed, not for conquest, but to inspire and prepare. Humanity is ready to stand." The cube pulsed one last time and then glowed steadily, its warmth comforting and strong. The construct beneath the tomb lowered itself slightly, as if acknowledging Omar's understanding. The guardians outside remained vigilant yet calm. All was as it should be. Omar looked up at the endless stars. He felt hope, determination, and a sense of destiny. The tomb had been lost for 3,000 years, but now its secret was awake. Humanity's future was no longer limited to the sand and stone of Earth. It reached into the stars, guided by courage, wisdom, and unity. The desert returned to its quiet rhythm. The guardians stood watch. The tomb rested once more, but this time as a place of promise rather than secrecy. Omar and his team would carry its story, its lessons, and its responsibility into the world. Humanity had a choice, and in that desert, beneath the stars, Omar knew they had made the right one. They would rise not to dominate but to protect. They would face the future boldly, guided by the wisdom of the past and the courage within themselves. The lost Pharaoh's tomb, hidden for 3,000 years, had fulfilled its purpose. It had awakened humanity to its potential and its destiny, and under the endless night sky, Omar held the cube, ready to lead the way.